All right. Big fight coming up this Saturday. Alexander Povetkn versus Anthony Joshua over in the UK. Um, this fight is an intriguing fight to me. A lot of people really aren't giving Alexander Povetkin much of a chance, but Alexander Povetkin is a strong, pretty athletic heavyweight, even though he's older, 39 years old. But this is a division. We have fighters who don't really have to make weight, and you've seen a lot of older heavyweights have success and have long careers. Both Klitschko brothers fought close, Klitschko fought at 40 years old. His brother fought, I think, close to 40 or 40-ish himself. Lennox Lewis retired when he was 38. Vander Holyfield had a long career too, was successful late in his career. And as everyone knows, George Foreman was able to reclaim the heavyweight title in his mid-40s, 45, I believe. So, age is a factor in boxing. There's no question about it. Guys do lose something as they get older, but in this division where one punch changes everything, a lot of times that's the determining factor in a fight. So, in today's crop of heavyweights, you don't really have a lot of defensive specialists like you did in the 90s. I mean, guys like Holyfield, Riddick Bowe, even George Foreman, Chris Bird, Lennox Lewis, those guys were pretty slick in their own right in the way they were able to defend. In today's crop of heavyweights, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, even Joseph Parker to some degree, these guys aren't really hard to hit. Dillian White, they're not hard to hit. Povetkin sometimes isn't hard to hit himself when he decides to get in firefights. But Povetkin is a very skilled fighter. He knows how to work behind his jab very well. He knows how to get inside. And when he's allowed to fight on the inside, he can put shots together and get some good work in there. He's a good body puncher, really has a sharp left hook up on the inside. Gets low, knows how to move his head, knows how to step around and position himself up close, step around his opponent's shots, create angles on the inside. So he's a dangerous guy. He's a dangerous opponent. He's how to fight. He's got some solid wins over decent opposition, but the one time when he really stepped up against Vladimir Klitschko, we saw what happened there. Prime Vladimir Klitschko, who had his jab on point in that fight, really didn't throw a lot of punches in that fight. It was kind of an ugly, sloppy fight. Even though Povetkin got knocked down 4 times in that fight, he showed resilience, and Klitschko still fought somewhat cautiously. At any time Povetkin got close, he would grab him up and he would kind of lean on him. And critics of that fight were wondering, why the ref wasn't taking points away. I mean, one point was taken away later because he pushed Povetkin, but there was some excessive holding in that fight, and the officiating was criticized in that fight because of it. So how does this fight play out? Well, let's take a look at the common opponent that both of these guys have in Carlos Takam. Anthony Joshua clearly won the fight. He was winning the rounds, but they were hard-fought rounds. They were kind of sloppy, and he didn't look great on the inside. Instead of stepping out a little bit, stepping off to the side a little bit, creating angles and kind of giving himself some space, he decided to stay in there with Takam and try to grind it out on the inside. And because of that, he ended up getting headbutted in the nose, and I believe his nose was damaged pretty bad. Looked like it was broken, but I'm not sure if it was. But at any rate, it seemed as though he made that fight harder than he had to. So the difference between how Povetkin handled Takam went to war with Povetkin, and Povetkin really wore him down, and he got a clean knockout in the 10th round, whereas Anthony Joshua had a questionable knockout in the 10th round. It appeared to me as though it was an early stoppage, even though Joshua was winning every round. He was out landing Takam to some degree, or he was landing cleaner, harder shots to some degree. But the rounds were competitive. They were hard fought, but Joshua was clearly winning them, and we expected Joshua to probably win a little bit more impressively, at least I did, than he did. And it looked like Takam could go on in that 10th round. So Alexander Povetkin, with that similar style, facing Takam, got a clean stoppage, knocked him out with a beautiful left hook, and Takam really couldn't finish that fight. So how does this fight play out? Well, let's look at some factors here. Anthony Joshua is most successful, in the mid-range area. Even though he's tall and lanky, he's an okay outside fighter, but his bread and butter is when he gets in that mid-range area and he can crank up those 45s and those left hooks. His right hand is good, but it seems to me that his left hook is his power punch. His left hand is his real bread and butter money maker. And we've seen him land that left hook against Klitschko, that half hook, half uppercut against Klitschko, and that put Klitschko on Queer Street in the 11th round, which was the beginning of the end. Now, he's going to be punching down, and because he's going to be punching down, he's going to create some openings upstairs for Povetkin. And a problem with Joshua, too, is sometimes he gets inconsistent with his jab. It's a good jab when he decides to throw it and use it, but the problem is he's very inconsistent with it, and a lot of times when he throws it out there, he's lazy with it. He doesn't pull it right back to his face. So Joshua is not as defensively responsible to me as prime Vladimir Klitschko was. Doesn't have as sharp and consistent a jab either. And he tends to try to fight guys off on the inside and doesn't really hold much. So there's going to be opportunities for Alexander Povetkin in this fight, more so than there were in the Klitschko fight, just because of the different styles here. Now, Joshua's not the fastest guy on his feet, but he's got pretty decent hand speed, whereas Povetkin's got pretty decent hand speed and he's got pretty decent foot speed. So I see Povetkin having some moments in this fight because Joshua's not really consistent with that jab. He may give up some space here. He may give up space here, and he may end up trading and going to war in certain spots here with Alexander Povetkin. So he may try to be cautious in spots like he was against Parker because he didn't throw a lot of punches. So he may not be really overly aggressive in terms of punch output. But in terms of positioning here, I have a feeling that this fight will somewhat be fought on Alexander Povetkin's terms. But the question is, with that being said, even if the fight is fought on Alexander Povetkin's terms, will that be enough to give him a chance to win the fight or actually win the fight? That's the huge question there because Gennady Golovkin just fought Saul Canelo Alvarez last week, and the fight was fought on his terms, but still was a real tight fight and a hard-fought fight on both guys. It was hard to determine at the end who really won the fight in a lot of people's minds. So I know a lot of people looking at this fight as a walkover, but I just don't see this fight as a walkover. Alexander Povetkin is a huge underdog here, but I think because of the way Joshua's looked these last couple of fights, he's looked vulnerable. He's looked pretty, easy to hit in spots. That Parker hit him with a beautiful right hand. Looked like it got his attention. Takam was landed shots against him on the inside with the left hook. He's shown vulnerabilities in these last two fights. And the more I look at Joshua, even though he's a dynamic fighter, and he's a very, very good fighter, I'm starting to see weaknesses, like I told you about the jab, leaving the jab out there, getting lazy with it sometimes. Doesn't move his head that well. Sometimes he just stands there, in the mid-range area, and he squares up. And when he's focusing on his offense is basically his defense. So he's not really concerned too much about what's coming at him. And then when he does get hit and hurt, that's when he decides to kind of back off a little bit and regroup. But he does put himself in harm's way a lot of times because he'll throw some power shots in it. And a lot of times he'll really overextend and lean in sometimes and overshoot some of these shots. And because of that, he creates openings for his opponent. So like I said, he's more successful in the mid-range area, but when you give him space like Parker did, or you kind of smother him a little bit like Dillian White did and like Carlos Takam did, he has success, but it's tougher for him at that range. So I think this fight could turn out to be a phone booth war. But the question is, this fight is in the UK. Will the referee allow them to fight on the inside, number one? And number two, something else to look at is if, just like the Takam fight, where Joshua put a couple punches together and buzzed Takam a little bit, but didn't really hurt him to the point where he looked like he was incapacitated. But if he does something similar to that against Povetkin, will the referee step in and stop the fight in the same type fashion? Because so much is on the line in this fight for Anthony Joshua. We know that. A lot of huge paydays on the horizon for Anthony Joshua, that Wilder fight, that Fury fight possibly. So how is this fight going to be officiated? Will Povetkin be allowed to fight on the inside? And if he is in the least bit of danger, will the referee step in? Because again, in the 7th round against Klitschko, he was knocked down 3 times, but he still finished the fight. So if a prime Klitschko was able to hurt him a few times and not get him out of there, can a close to prime Anthony Joshua, because I'm sure he still has room to improve, he may get better, but we can say he's in his prime now. Will a prime Anthony Joshua be able to get a 39-year-old Alexander Povetkn out of there? Okay. Now I know the black cloud of the drug testing is over Povetkin's head, but from what Eddie Hearn has said, VADA's really been testing Alexander Povetkin in the lead up to this fight. So they feel pretty confident that he'll be clean for this fight, but you never know. This guy's been around for a long time, and I'm sure he's passed tests, possibly, in my opinion, that maybe he could have been doing something in training camp. Who knows? But again, we're going to have to assume this fight is on the up and up. And we're going to have to assume that both guys will be clean for this matchup. So with that being said, Alexander Povetkin's got so much going against him in this fight. So much going against him in this fight. It's in the UK. It's going to be, I believe UK judges, if I'm not mistaken, and probably going to be a UK referee. So he's got that going against him. And also, again, we've seen Joshua in fights where it seems as though the referee appears to be helping him out in certain situations. In the Parker fight, I think the officiating was horrible there. I don't think he let Parker fight. Parker got close and stuff. Incredulously, the referee that Italian referee was breaking them really quick and not allowing for exchanges. Will that happen here again? It's a good question. It's something to think about if you're betting the fight. But I will say one thing here: the over/under in rounds is 8.5. I wouldn't be surprised if this fight went the distance. But again, I'm a little skeptical because of what happened in the Takam fight. I could see that happening again in this fight, where you could get a questionable stoppage if Joshua puts 2 or 3 together, and Povetkin takes a step back. The referee may step in early and stop this fight too. So that's a problem. But the over/under is 8.5 here, and it's a plus 140. My pick is going to be Anthony Joshua by 10th round stoppage here. But if I'm going to bet this fight, I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take the over 8.5 because I think this will be a tough fight. It could be a grueling fight. It could be a hard-fought fight. But Anthony Joshua at this stage may just have a little bit more in the tank than Alexander Povetkin. And that's going to be a factor. And also, I just think the referee is not going to do him any favors in this fight. And I just think that this situation with Anthony Joshua is just too big. And I think barring a knockout, I don't see Alexander Povetkin winning this fight on the cards. So my pick is going to be Anthony Joshua by 10th round stoppage. And I think it could be a tough fight. The interesting thing here is I know someone in the chat just said, T. White said that Joshua has no stamina. Povetkin has a chance if he can hurt him in the later rounds. Yeah, that's the case. That is the case. I think that's that could happen. And it's a tough one. And I'm having, I believe Joshua should win this fight, but something tells me this is just going to be tougher than a lot of people think. And I'm gonna if I'm you know I'm gonna take the conservative pick here, from a gambling standpoint, and just take the over 8.5 because I don't think he's going to blow Povetkin out of it like a lot of people think. I think this is going to be he's going to be a late round stoppage or decision. But I just have the feeling that the ref is just going to jump in as soon as Povetkin shows any signs of getting hit consecutively and being pushed back. I think the ref's just going to jump in. So that's my pick, guys. Alexander Povetkin is going to be stopped. He's going to get stopped in 10 rounds. Anthony Joshua is going to get a 10th round TKO in this fight, in a fight where he may show more weakness and may look vulnerable at times, but I think he may be able to hang on and get the victory here. All right, guys. Until next time, Beeb is out. This fight should be an entertaining fight. I'm looking forward to it. It's not the fight that I wanted, but again, I'm curious. I think I'm just intrigued to see how Anthony Joshua handles this tough, rugged style. And and you can say what you want about Povetkin. This guy is an Olympic gold medalist. He's a really solid fighter. He's been around the block. He knows how to fight. He's heavy-handed. Throws a decent amount of punches. So with all that being said, I think this is the recipe for a very entertaining fight one way or the other, regardless if you like the matchup or not. I think you're going to be entertained, and you may like it more than you think. This may be more competitive than you think, and you may be more intrigued by this matchup, and you can be saying at the end of this fight, wow, that was a good fight, whereas going in, you're thinking it's a blowout. So I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised here, and I'm looking forward to it, guys. Until next time, Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. I'll probably do a breakdown after the fight, post-fight recap. I hope y'all can be there, chop it up a little bit more. Until next time, Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Peace. Have a great day.